Hey, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. It's a big football Friday. Buckeyes will be taking on the Nittany Lions over in Happy Valley. Big noon kick. Got a big show for you today. Got Ari Wasserman going to join us here momentarily from On 3, talk a little bit about this game and some of the bigger games as well across the slate of college football, what it ultimately means for the Buckeyes as well. And what's great is, Schlegs, normally we do this thing apart. And today we figured it'd be you, me. Couldn't get AJ here today, so we got our boy, the 𝗟𝗑𝗩𝗘, hanging out with us here. And so pretty excited to get all this rolling. And it's going to be a big time challenge at Happy Valley to be able to get that done. I mean, so this is a huge game, and the environment is going to be rabid. It's going to be a very frothy environment.
So fun.
And the emotional regulation in this game, I think, is going to be key.
Yeah, I always like to used to call it controlled chaos. So you want to be up, but like what you still stick with your routine and whatever that is that looks like for you. You guys go out there, they do a dynamic warm-up, they come in, and they go out to individuals. What are you doing before that? How do you take care of your body? How do you look over your tip sheet, right? Some guys do, some guys don't, right? I used to be the DJ of the locker room, right? And it was definitely an Oreo mix in there, but like guys like to listen to their headphones, whatever that is. But then you go out and then boom, it's just go time. It's just you and your teammates. And it's super fun. These type of games, it's all about you, your brothers, your coaches against what it seems like the world, very gladiator-esque. And that's why you love playing in these games, and that's why you come to Ohio State.
Why is your lip sweating so much?
I don't know. I've been doing a lot of stuff. Can you guys see my lip sweat over there? Maybe that's because I'm on my third coffee with a double shot of espresso, just rolling.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, maybe that's the energy the guys are looking for. I know we've talked a lot this week about the energy, the things that this team needs to get going, what's going to happen. We might even dive into some comments section a little bit later with this. But you talk about everybody getting ready for this game in their own way. And I think it's kind of important to understand, important to note, like for these guys to kind of figure this out and to kind of navigate their own path. This is going to be interesting because each guy does kind of have their own unique style, their own unique personality. But, a lot of this too, this game is going to come down when you go on the road, like you talked about Maradi packing your big boy britches, packing your run game, your defense. But at some point in time, you got to make sure your leaders are there. Whether that's captains, seniors, veteran players, guys who have played a lot, guys who have that, the personality, the guys that people follow. The Bo Bishop calls them the follow me to freedom guys, the Braveheart guys. And you've got to figure out who those guys are and what that looks like and the extra burden, Schlegs, that's going to be placed on them this week.
Yeah, I think part of that, we always go back in the game of football, it's win the one-on-ones. And that's how you lead, right? You go make sure that you do your job. You have to trust your teammates. But win your one-on-ones, like take pride in winning your one-on-ones. But this game will be a very emotional game. And we've seen throughout, like even the last 2 weeks, it just came to a one-on-one. It came to a doing your job. It came to getting off the field or tackling the quarterback. They don't get 27 extra yards, and actually Ohio State wins that game. Or you get ball in a great field position and you score and punch it in as opposed to getting held on fourth down, or you make a field goal. Now you're up 10. Now you're at 24-3 at halftime. It looks completely different, but that goes into winning your one-on-ones and doing your job and playing within yourself, not necessarily playing perfect. Like nobody's ever played a perfect game, Bob, but what you can do in this game is you can play really fast, really hard, and really violent. And in a hostile environment like that, like that's what has to happen. And these moments, like this is where I remember us having the fun.
Yeah, fun.
The fun, right? This is the fun. The work week, it's serious, it's business, it's install, it's locked in. Yes, you're locked in during the game, but Saturdays is about the players.
Saturdays is for the players. Saturdays for the boys. And we got our main dude here, Ari Wasserman, going to join us next. He is sitting in the queue. So we're going to take a quick break. Before we get out here, I want to tell you this. Attention, parents and athletes. Protect what matters most with X Sport mouth guards. Worn by professional athletes, designed by NHL team dentists. Export mouth guards are scientifically tested to absorb those high impact hits so you don't end up like a jaw like Schlegs. They protect your teeth and your brain. Export mouth guards, they feature 3 layers of advanced protection, including patented use of carbon fiber. They 3D print those bad boys right to your grill so they fit snug. They protect for better performance, max comfort, clear communication. Focus on the game, not on your gear. Don't take chances with your safety. Go to exportguards.com/Bobby today. Save 15% on your order. Export protect what matters most. Ari Wasserman on 3 coming up next. Our guy, Mr. Ari Wasserman. Ari, thanks for spending some time with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I always love coming on your show.
So, Ari, I mean, bringing out the flamethrower, the Buckeyes lose to Oregon, bye week, come out and play Nebraska. Looks a little rough at times. End up winning the game ultimately. Maybe the win doesn't always feel like a win. Heading into Penn State, how are we feeling about where this Buckeye team is at?
I remember the last segment that I did on this show like 6 weeks ago, talking about how I thought they were by far the best team in college football. They were my national championship pick. The way that they were assembled was, a rare roster that's maybe part of a dying breed in the way that the sport is set up. And man, I don't know what happened. I honestly do not know. Well, I guess I kind of do know what happened, but I'm shocked that it did. So I wrote a column, and the headline was just Ohio State has not been good enough under Ryan Day. And if you go back and you look, it seems harsh, but you guys know better than anybody what the standard is there. And it's a very high standard. And when you take the job to be there, the head coach there, you understand and accept that standard. And I don't want to dig up last 3 years because we all know what happened. But Ohio State's lost to the only team on its schedule that, quote unquote, was a challenge. And even then you can forgive that because Oregon, I think, might win the national title or play for it this year. There's just something off there, man. And I don't know what it is, but the parts that come in mirror what you see at Georgia, what you've traditionally seen at Alabama, what you've seen at the teams that win the national championships traditionally. And the output of what you get there does not match what you get at other places. And I don't know what it is. I'm not in the building every day. You guys are in there more than I am. So maybe you have a better idea. But the results on the field of what Ohio State is not as good as the sum of its parts. And I just don't know why. And, part of the reason why this year, obviously, is you have an offensive line issue. But even then, I'm very confused as to how Ohio State could have 2 weeks to prepare for Nebraska with an injured Josh Simmons and then put that on the field. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. So, that's how I feel about it. And it's kind of harsh, but I think it's rational. Is it rational? Like, am I wrong?
I'll go. You know what? I would say this back and forth. I understand too much in college football. We kind of compare not necessarily apples to apples. And then you have a bye week, you play Oregon, right? There's multiple opportunities on both sides to actually take control of that game. And it still came down to a 1-possession game, 1-point game on the road versus an opponent. And I'm with you. Like, the standard is the standard. And the standard is we're going to go out there and play complete football with the roster. And that's when you say about the roster assembled, I think that the lack of complete football, and I'm talking all 3 phases together in a game, has been the thing that we've wanted to see throughout this year. As far as where they are, I always, and Ari, this is a coach and a player's perspective, I always look at the positives, right? And I don't get to really look at it like I look at this. In that Nebraska game, you have a Nebraska team that got boat raced by Indiana, right? And we're like, oh man, if Ohio State is worth their salt, they're going to boat race Nebraska coming off of a bye week, right? Like, that's kind of the perception. It's like, man, what are they doing different? And then they don't. And then it's like, well, why? Those are great questions, right? Those are things that coaches have to figure out. That's why they get paid the money. But then I personally look at the positives. And the positive is you had a defense that had 13 TFLs. And people can say, well, that was on screens, that was on bad play calling. Like, you still got to go play the game. You had 13 TFLs, 3 sacks. Seen a better projection of sacks as compared to last year, which they only had 23. They're now sitting at 20, right? And I just kind of evaluate guys playing fast, guy hats around the ball. But then we saw something that we really haven't seen in the game is like, you got to go win the game in the fourth quarter. They go up, offense goes down, scores a touchdown, defense goes on the field, completes the game, right? So I look at it at that's a way of building upon everything, but I don't dismiss your viewpoint of how they should have looked or even the perception because we live in that kind of world.
So I guess the question is, Ari, like, which did you garner more insight from? Was it the Oregon game or the Nebraska game?
The Nebraska game. The Oregon game, sometimes you just go play a really good team on the road. And if you go look at the box score of the Oregon game, like they ran for the same amount of yards, they had the same amount of first downs, like time of possession was pretty close. They had the same, I mean, they played the same game, and one team won by 1 point. And honestly, I play the game as well as everybody. Is like, Jeremiah Smith doesn't get called for that flag, they win, right? Like I didn't like leave that game thinking Ohio State stinks. Like that's not at all what I thought. The thing that bothered me about the Nebraska game is that, and what you just said was true. Like I'm not saying that the entire game is just an absolute disaster and there's no positives. Of course, there's always positives.
Oh yeah.
The thing that scares me if I'm, an Ohio State fan about that game is that the issues that they were encountering offensively were personnel issues. Like that wasn't just, well, we didn't, prepare well enough or sleepwalking or, whatever people will say to dismiss that. Like they had an offensive line out there that was not efficient or effective in any way. And I don't like to isolate single individuals, but the Zen Mikulski, I think, graded out like 14% on pass pro plays in that game. And it just was not the best alignment for them. So I don't know what's going to happen this week because I think I saw that he's not playing and they might have to kick out Donovan Jackson to tackle. Maybe they'll figure it out. But for me with college football, and it's always been this way, you can survive bad weeks. And if had Ohio State beaten Oregon, maybe we'd be looking at the Nebraska game differently. But with Ohio State, I always view them through the lens of what they expect from themselves. And they expect to win the Big Ten, and they expect to win a national championship. And Nebraska is a tough team. They've got a pretty good interior defensive line. Obviously Dylan Raiola is a player that people are excited about in the future. But Ohio State, if it wants to be a Big Ten champion and it wants to win a national title, is more than 7 points. I mean, they're 25 points better than that team. And the reason why they weren't is because of a personnel issue that may or may not be fixable in the middle of the year. And like you bring up tackles for loss and sacks and all those things. And yes, those were there. Where were they in the Oregon game when it mattered the most? You know what I mean? Like, and it bothers me that this team, like I watched the Georgia team dismantle Texas the other night, 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, that is what a team is supposed to look like when it's clicking on all cylinders, and how many times just in general under Ryan's leadership has Ohio State just beaten the shit out of somebody? You know what I mean? Like, and just like absolutely. Yeah. And I'm not talking about Purdue. I'm talking about a team that is really good, that is fundamentally sound. And Ohio State just goes, we have 25 different players that are going to be in the first round in the next 4 years, and we're going to just dominate you. And it's just like it's just not there. And I don't know what the answer to that is. And maybe we'll see it. The greatest thing about this sport, guys, and this is you get to prove it again every Saturday. You get a chance to prove it. But with this offensive line, if you have a problem that's going to torpedo your offense because you don't have good enough players, which is not something that we said very often about Ohio State in the past, if ever, that is a very concerning thing to me. And I think there's a very good chance they could lose the game on Saturday.
So do you think the lack of maybe production, you mentioned the offensive line, losing Josh Simmons. I mean, anybody that loses a first round,
for sure,
like that's going to be hard. Depth, yeah, you can argue, should you have had a better option than Zen Mikulski? Maybe they do, and maybe this week looks better than last.
But then they had 2 weeks to figure it out and didn't? Isn't that concerning? Like that's like, it's like no matter how you frame it to me, and I'm like a very positive person. Like I feel like I have given Ohio State their flowers over, and I covered the program every day for 10 years. I know what that place is, what it's about. I know how special it is, and I know what it demands to be. So like when I'm critical, I don't think that Ryan Day should be fired or that he sucks at his job. I think Ryan Day is great, and there's a lot of things about him personally that I think are the perfect ambassador for the program. So don't like take it like I'm being hateful. I'm not.
Yep.
I am probably just demanding that Ohio State be what he wants it to be. Like, I think if he were sitting next to me, like I would be like, hey man, and he would be the first to acknowledge it. So like, I think there's a way of expressing that, you know, a team should be something because of the respect that you have for the sum of its parts. And like, I just don't see it right now. And I would be curious to know what you guys think of, like, this isn't an isolated incident. This isn't like, oh, they had a bad game against Nebraska and they lost to I mean, we're going on 4 years of this. There are seniors on this team that have never beaten Michigan and have never paid for a Big Ten championship. Like, is that okay?
Right. No, it's not okay. I mean, and I go back to, like, you look at Oregon the first 2 weeks, you had Boise State, you had Idaho struggled, right? Then they started clicking a little bit.
Sure.
Well, you're saying, Ari, and I appreciate what you're saying. And Ryan even alluded to it, right? He's like, we want to come out here and leave no doubt. And we did not do that. Like, that was his post-game comments of the Nebraska game. And then you go back and you look, that's the beauty of coaching. That's why I'm excited about this week. Before you go down the rabbit hole as to the why, I want to see what happens, because now you're on the road at Penn State, the number 3 team in the country. Have you figured it out? And to your point, hey, you had 2 weeks to kind of figure out the offensive line. Is that the best that you can do? But now, what is the identity of the offense going to look like, right? Because you got to change it up. I mean, before you could just run power, run inside, do those things. Now what's going to happen? You're going to have to get the quarterback into the game, or you're going to have to run some RPOs. It's going to look very different, but that's also why they pay you. But we got to see a complete game. And I know that he wants to see that. I know that we want to see that. I want to see that. And then once that doesn't mature, then you definitely have to ask these questions as to why. And I think he's asking himself why, but that's also why you got to get on the coaches. Because to me, at this level, it is always about the coaching.
You're right.
The players got to be held accountable to execute, but the coaches have the opportunity to put them in the right position to figure these things out, because players just go out there and play.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And like, listen, Ohio State has everything that you would need to win a national championship. Like, that's what they are. Like, so, and I don't know if this offensive line issue is something that is, we had the wrong alignment last week. We kicked Jonathan Jackson out. Everything's fine. Like, maybe that'll be the case. Ohio State going to State College and beating Penn State comfortably should not be a surprise. Like, that's what I would have picked, 2 weeks ago. I think I thought that Ohio State would win the Big Ten after they lost to Oregon the night of. So, like, I look at the team and I look at the individual parts that they have on both sides of the ball, and there is no other team in college football that has better players at more positions. So I think that's probably why this is probably most frustrating for Ohio State fans, right? Because you look at this and, you've seen 4 years now where, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but you know that picture that floats around of Marvin Harrison and Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave and Jameis. You know that picture that everybody. Yeah. Does that not drive you nuts? No. Like, if I were an Ohio State fan, that would drive me nuts. It's like, on one hand, it's like, wow, CJ Stroud and all these awesome NFL players all playing together on the same team, and it's like they won nothing. How? Like, and it's just like I just don't know how. And during a year where Penn State is better than we thought they would be, they still are not built like Ohio State. Michigan is down. Oregon is the closest thing in the Big Ten to being built like them, and they lost a tough game on the road that they could have won. In the 12-team era, that really doesn't matter all that much. But you need to be great in November, and you need to be who you're going to be, because at a certain point, you can't be, well, if they held the block against Michigan last year for an extra second, they would have won. Oh, if Marvin Harrison wouldn't have come out of the Georgia game, they would have won. If Jeremiah Smith wouldn't have been called for offensive pass interference, they would have won. It's like, how many times can you play that game before you demand results? And that's kind of like where I'm at right now. It's like, okay, well, they've been close, but Ohio State's not built to be close.
All right, we're going to take a quick break because you hit on a lot of good points there. We'll be back with Ari Wasserman on 3 next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter show. Still here with our guy, Ari Wasserman. Some great stuff. Go check them out on 3. They do a fantastic job over there. Him and Andy Staples just do a terrific job. Andy's more of an SEC guy. Ari, more of our Buckeye Big Ten guy, and they go back and forth. And we're talking offline, like Ari picks Ohio State all the time. Why? Because they have the best players. And you look at that, you look at this roster construction, and you look at some of the things that you've seen are, through the first 5, 6, 7 weeks, and even some of the stuff you saw at Oregon. And I understand, like, sometimes the run game's just not going to get going. You have issues in the offensive line. There's things you can do to cover up protection. I guess the question was like, you have some of these receivers, and I'm a big guy. You got to run the ball, especially in big games on the road. And so you don't want to abandon it. But to be maybe more aggressive, it's sometimes easier to run the ball when you stretch the field. Sometimes it's easier to play defense when you're a little more aggressive and you're going downhill. Like, where are you balancing players making plays, but maybe in some of these games not being quite as aggressive? And I know in the Georgia game 2 years ago, defensively, it kind of came back to bite them, and people are like, hey, we got great players. We don't need to blitz all the time. But then also, like, we have great players. Let's go put it to them a little bit, a la Georgia to Texas, which you referenced earlier. Kind of where do you come down on that being aggressive, the coaches, versus sometimes players going out and it being on them to make the plays?
Yeah, I actually think that it's a very interesting tightrope because on one hand, Ryan Day, I think you could make the case, has been more aggressive against overmatched opponents than he has been in big games. Like, I would like to see him be more aggressive in the bigger games. Like last year when I wasn't even at the game, but I was watching the Michigan game on TV with everybody else. And when they were driving before halftime and then kind of shut down the clock and then tried to kick that 50-yard field goal that missed on that fourth down, I was just like, that's not it right there. Like, and to me, it's like people are like, take the points, you're in a close game, you don't want to be too aggressive, make a catastrophic mistake. But it's like, I thought that Ryan Day was supposed to be the aggressive guy. Like, I thought that was your thing of like, we've got better players, it's 4th and 2, we could run the ball on you, we can throw it on you, no matter what we do, we're going to be better than you and we're going to get it done. So like, I think that he's been overly aggressive in games that aren't high leverage moments and not aggressive enough in big games. So if you're talking to me about the beginning of the third quarter through the fourth quarter, the Nebraska game, like, I think it's interesting. It's like, should they have thrown it more? Should they have tried not to run it as much? I guess in hindsight, that probably makes sense because in the game winning drive that they had, they just threw it on the field like there was nobody there. And the truth is, guys, nobody in college football is equipped to cover these receivers. Like, they've got the best receivers in college football. So if they're going to get open, like, I think Jeremiah Smith is the best receiver in college football already.
Yeah.
If you cannot be covered, then use it, right? But then on the other hand, I get a little nervous because there were times where they were unstoppable through the air in the past in Michigan games where it's like, wow, they really could have run the ball there. And that should have helped. So you're right. It's a catch-22. You want to ask for aggressiveness, but if aggressiveness doesn't work and it turns into a mistake that costs you a game, then you're killed for that. I think Ohio State's best teams that I've covered, and I did the whole Urban Meyer era in person, they were very, very good at running the football. And I think that stuff travels in every game. And, they leaned on it and they knew they were going to be able to do it. So I don't fault Ryan Day for trying to get that going against Nebraska. But I bet if he could replay the third quarter last week, he probably would have aired it out a little bit more.
Yeah, 1 for 10 on third down isn't going to get it done, and it puts your defense in a tough predicament when they're on the field for 10 more minutes than your offense was. And then you just alluded to it, Ari. Like, that's why you sign up to be the head football coach at Ohio State or on the staff as a coach, because are we aggressive? Are we not? Like, it is a balancing act as to when we got to do what we got to do. Ultimately, it always comes back to me, win the football game. And that's why I liked about this. Like, we haven't had that adversity. We faced it. Now you're going on the road. Let's get into this game. Penn State, Ohio State, big noon kickoff. What do the Buckeyes have to do to win this football game?
Block well. I really think that's like, I mean, honestly, I wish that, like, you guys have better football minds than me. Like, you could go up to the whiteboard and draw all the X's and O's and stuff. Like, I don't mean to sound like so condescending, but it's just like, block somebody and do it well, and do it well in the run game and do it well in the pass game, because they've got some dudes on their defensive line, guys. Like, it's like, I was thinking, like, the performance that we saw from their offensive line last week, if like Michael Williams in Georgia was against them, they wouldn't have gotten a first down in that game. Like, it's just, it was it the worst offensive line performance that we've seen since the beginning of the Urban Meyer era? Like, I can't think of a worst one.
I mean, I was up in the press box with Jim and Paul in the booth, and it was around the middle of the third, fourth, whatever they go for, right around the 50 on third and 1, gets stuffed, then run it again and got stuffed. And I could not believe, because they were right in front of us, dead center, and I saw no movement on the offensive line. Like, I'm not putting that on the running backs. And It's like, well, maybe you could run quarterback power with Will Howard, and that gets you going a little bit, and you have an extra hat there, and that's something that Urban would have done, and so maybe that's something that they lean into moving forward. Maybe you get the quarterback running with Will, because I honestly think that Will Howard has been as good, if not better, than I anticipated him being when they got here, and I'm excited and hopeful that they lean into him a little bit more this weekend.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting is that going back to your previous question, Bobby, like, how do you throw it more if you find that the extra hat helps? Like the extra tight end helping with the tackle, or getting a running back in the blocking game so that you can carry the ball with, like, Chip Kelly. Let's not forget, his number one strength as an offensive coordinator is run concepts, right? Like at UCLA, he was a wizard at that. So, like, the question that I have back for you guys is on a scale from 1 to 10, because I like to ask people this stuff. How big of an issue do you think Ohio State's offensive line personnel situation is? And how likely, like, just how drastic is it, do you think? Is it 1 to 10?
10 being the worst.
Yeah, like 10 is like, this is not, you can't overcome this, you're going to lose because of it.
I would say, after watching some of the things that have gone on, I would say it's probably 5 or a 6, maybe 7. But, like, as far as can it be solved, like, I think there's solvability. I do think they have some answers there. And, like, moving Donovan Jackson to go tackle isn't ideal, but you have Carson Hinsman, who played center last year the whole season, like, who hasn't really played, can play some guard. So he's an experienced player, should be a year better, a year stronger. Like, they should have some of those answers. Now, to your point earlier, Ari, why didn't they do that last week? As opposed to playing Zen Mahalski? That's a great question. Did they feel like that was the best solution? And if it truly is, then that's really bad. But I don't know if that truly was. And it was maybe more of a hope that, hey, here's a guy who's been here a long time. He can kind of grow into this role. And make no mistake.
I mean, can I interject here real quick?
Yeah.
All week we were talking about whether Zen was going to be healthy this week because he was going to play. So, like, that solution that you just said was not the solution that they voluntarily landed on.
Or maybe that's just what you're saying, right?
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm saying, maybe
that's just what you're saying, because, again, like, you're not tipping anything, right? Like, Zen might be the guy. And that's the thing, right? Like, it's different in the league when you have to have these different reports every single day. Guy comes out, whether or not he's questionable or not. The good thing about college is, like, you can leave it to where there's a lot of gray you don't even know. And even if you know that now we had to go in a different direction, you're not going to openly say that, right? You're just going to go make an adjustment, and guess what? You're going to roll out there first play of the game. Here's who we got. Like, that's kind of the beauty. It's the chess match within it. Same thing we're doing with Aller and the backup quarterback. Like, who's it going to be? Now we got to prepare for him, even though there's clips of him running around. And that's what's fun about this. And that's why I don't make too much about it. But we both are in agreement. It's something that has to be adjusted. And the good thing that you do have, in my honest opinion, is you have Seth McLaughlin there in the middle, the guy that's set in the front. Like, utilize that guy. You know what I mean? Like, Josh Fryer's been playing pretty well. Like, utilize those guys to get him going and have some fun. Get the quarterback run game in there, because now that we saw that with Indiana versus Nebraska game, it was that RPO quarterback run, boom, quick shot. Like, they were able to get movement. They rushed for over 200 yards in that game. How does Chip flip the script to be able to do that in our own unique way at Ohio State? That honestly is my biggest, what I want to see the most out of this game is, what did we do right different this week than last week? And again, I take away, well, you had 2 weeks to prepare. Yeah, so what? On to the next. Make sure we figure it out. That's the most important thing.
I will say this. And this, let's, like, make this Fantasyland thing up, but if because sometimes you do, not what you said, I'm going to play Fantasyland.
Okay.
So in college football, we have seen teams in the past mess with their alignments and then unlock something like, oh, wow, that works at a way that, like, we didn't even anticipate would work. If Ohio State figures something out on their offensive line where Donovan Jackson's outside and this new alignment is functional and good, which they should have the players for that to be a possibility.
For sure.
I would think that this team is good enough to win the national title. If they can't figure this out and it's bad again, they're going to lose Saturday. Like, and I think that this is like, and we're at the point of the season,
Mhm.
like Abdul Carter is on their defensive line. Like,
Yeah, they're good.
there's like, we're talking about a top 15 pick here. So like, and then if you're fortunate enough to win that game, you're going to be playing some other guys in, other conferences. I think Ohio State is probably fully optimal, playing great football. Like if you got the Ohio State team that played in that Georgia game 2 years ago, that type of level football, I would say that Ohio State's probably a 14-point better team than Penn State, top to bottom.
Yeah.
Like this is so like the fact that I'm saying they're probably going to be in a position where they could lose because of this is like, that's how dire I feel it is. So I cannot wait, like you guys, to watch the game and see if they can figure it out. But personnel issues, man, they're just a lot harder to solve than schematic issues. And my hope for them is that they can do it. I'm excited to watch. And either way, on Saturday night, we're going to know what this team is, in my opinion.
So what's interesting is sometimes you can solve personnel issues with schematic issues.
Yeah, sure.
Solutions. And I'm curious to see if what Chip Kelly does to try to solve that in the run game. The other thing too, they lost Will Kazmarek, which is, and I think he'll be back this year, but that was kind of an underreported thing. He doesn't catch a lot of balls, but he helps in the run game. But how do you protect those tackles up front while still utilizing receivers and pushing the ball down the field? All right, I'll let you go with this. And I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse. I said this about Michigan when they played Texas and USC. I was like, you'll know in the first 2 drives each way whether or not they've got a chance to win.
Yep.
And what the game's going to look like. And in Texas, you could see, no. USC, like, okay, there's a path. They're going to have to play well, but there's a path. I think you'll have a really good idea 2 series in from each team, how good the defense is playing, and then ultimately, can the offensive line get blocked? Can they get a little push? Can they create seams, and can they block it? Because either you can or you can't.
Yeah, and that, the thing too is that's like schematic solutions are literally the entire description of being a coach. What can you do to overcome your shortcomings physically by playing chess better? Penn State's got some issues too, guys. Like I know that like this is an Ohio State show, but they don't, like, no offense to Julian Fleming, but they don't have receivers. Okay. Like Ohio State can make that team one-dimensional if they're able to key on Tyler Warren and stop it. Like Ohio State defensively has a route there to make Penn State very uncomfortable offensively, and we don't even know who's going to play quarterback yet. So like I don't want to come onto your show for 15 minutes or 20 minutes and just doom and gloom the whole way. Like I think Ohio State is so good. And like if they figure it out, I think they're going to be awesome. And Ryan Day gets a lot of flack, including from me sometimes, but I respect the hell out of him and the man that he is. And it'll be cool to see if he can pull himself out of this, because they have the ingredients. It's like when you go to a pizza place, Little Caesars can never be better than Little Caesars because the ingredients suck, but you can have good ingredients and make a shitty pizza, so Ohio State's got the best ingredients. Now can they make a great pizza?
I love that.
Real quick before we let you go, she mentioned Penn State a little bit about their personnel. Offensively, good run game, not great elite on the edges, Ty Warren. Defensively, box personnel, good defensive line, really solid linebackers. I don't think their secondary is that great, which should, like you said, lead them to be able to that potential double-digit victory should they press the ball some down the field, and that's what I'd love to see.
Yeah, and I think that you're right about the Will Howard stuff. Like we didn't recognize this enough, I don't think. But Ohio State's offense, though powerful and exciting the last few years, I think was hurt because they lacked the quarterback running dimension. Like, look how much different Ohio State was in the Georgia game in CJ's last year than they were in the regular season because he ran the ball. Like, you guys know how much that matters. If they can get an extra blocker in there and open up some lanes and really work the RPO stuff and the option stuff that they do so well, and let their quarterback pick up some yardage and he rushes for 60 yards in this game, I think that the game is completely different. So, like you said, personnel issues, schematic issues, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day's have got some work to do, but I think that they can do it. So, I think Ohio State's a very good football team, and this season's going to be fun. They have an opportunity to do something special here, and let's see if they can unlock it.
All right, we took up way too much of your time. You're a busy man. Thank you for spending some time with us, folks. Make sure you check him out on 3. Ari Wasserman does a great job. him and Andy Staples. Fun stuff. Thank you for some time today, sir. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime you need me, guys, just
Thanks,
give me a
bro.
holler.
Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and now we've got some headlines. Our headlines are brought to you by our friends over at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health, they're the best. Listen, you want to get better, you want to feel better about yourself, you want to have the juice to be able to do the things that you want to. They'll offer a personalized treatment program for you. Maybe it's weight loss, maybe it's muscle loss, sleep loss. You just don't feel all that great. Your energy isn't where it needs to be. Go see my friends over at Affinity Whole Health. Affinity Whole Health, they will take care of you. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to head there, you go to AffinityWholeHealth.com. You set up your free consultation. You go in there and you say, hey, here's my plan. This is what I'd like. You're a dude, you're a dudette, however old you are, whatever stage of life you're in. They got semaglutide programs. They've got hormone replacement therapy programs. They can mix those together. They develop the solution. They ship it to your house. It'll be there in 2 days. AffinityWholeHealth.com. All right, Schlegs.
All right, let's go.
Look at our headline here. 2 years ago, Ohio State went to Happy Valley.
Ooh.
And it was a happy ending. It was a little dicey. Buckeyes are 9-1 against James Franklin in Penn State. You were a part of a couple of those number ones while Urban was there. JT Tuimoloau had the game that everybody had been waiting on. They said this was going to be his breakout game. Now, I don't know if anybody can really replicate this. 6 tackles, 3 TFLs, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, 2 interceptions, and a touchdown. I mean, that's a career. Outside of the tackles and TFLs, like that's a season first guy, a great season. That's like a career for some players. I don't know if he needs to do that because I don't know if that's possible again for any human. But he needs to play big and he needs to step up. And this would be the ideal week to do that. Returning to the scene of a crime.
Yeah, and then after the game, James Franklin, say my name. Right, because the guy couldn't even pronounce his name. Yeah, I mean, like honestly, you know exactly who he is, and you're right, Bob. Like this is the type of game where
he's never recruited a Polynesian guy before. Like, what are we talking about?
I mean, they also like in their names have the periods, like in the dots in between. Like, how do you actually say it?
Doomajigs.
The doomajigs within the doomajig to say the doomajig. So that being said, this would be a great week for him to have a big game. Again, leader of the team. These are the moments that you got to step up. I expect him to have a really good game. Buckeyes are going to need it.
You know, him, Jack Sawyer. This would be big for the defensive ends to play big.
Yes.
Tyreek Williams. Penn State has a really good defensive line. And so you've got, what did Fick used to always tell us? You've got to outplay their defense.
Yep, that's right.
And this is an opportunity. Like, I look at this, Penn State's not explosive on the perimeter. Should be able to handle those guys. If you can handle it up front, win the battle in the box.
When you want to win.
Like, that's what I've been telling you for years.
Who doesn't know that?
You got to win the battle in the box. Write that down, guys, because that's going to be key. Stop the run, bottle him up, contain Aller. He really doesn't want to run. He's a little bit gimped up anyway. If they bring Pabula in, then you've got to make certain.
Yes.
People are, who would you rather play? I'd rather play Aller because I running quarterbacks, any second level, they're the bane of your existence. You're chasing around all day, you get tired. You know, unless you got a great plan, which I'm sure they do, but especially at home, it's going to be a little bumpy. So Drew Aller's going to play. He's a Cleveland guy. Unless they sawed his leg off, he'll be out there. They got video of him running and doing some stuff. So I would imagine they'll be ready, and they're playing for both of them. And then also we got this, Schlegs. We got this. Chip Kelly talking about Jeremiah Smith and Jigba. Or Jeremiah Smith and Jigba. Jeremiah Smith, J.J. Smith, Jackson Smith and Jigba. A lot of Smiths going on. It's almost like you're dealing with a 10-year NFL veteran. The dude is serious. He shows up. And they're going to need this because I always say pack your run game on the road. But this guy right here, Jackson Smith and Jeremiah Smith.
JJ.
I keep watching that Seahawks clip of him having all those yards and catches this week. Jeremiah Smith, though, it's going to be big for him to come up and play huge because he's a freshman, but he carries himself like a veteran guy, which is what Chip says. And you're going to need him to play big. He needs to have explosive gains in this game.
Yeah, and this is something that we've seen from him all year. Already 8 receiving touchdowns as a freshman, tying for the record. Guys, we saw this when he came into the building. It's like there's just something different about this guy besides his build. Built different. And one, I credit that to having a cousin that plays in the NFL, right? He understands what is required to perfect your craft. He also has a very veteran room with, 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 and the like, right? Carnell Tate's only a sophomore as well. He had a 100-yard game. And JJ's one of those guys too, guys. He's not a big talker. He's a doer, right? So he leads by the way he carries himself, by the way he prepares, and by the way he plays. Like, honestly, he's the break glass guy. Boom, break it, throw it up to 4, and let's see what happens. I truly believe he's gonna have a big game in this one.
I think he's going to, and hopefully they get him involved. We saw him early in the year, some of the reverses, getting the ball short, let him run, take some shots over the top. He's good on everything.
Leadership has no age, right? This is a great testament to that, guys. Though he's a freshman, he's a leader, and he leads by the way that he plays and prepares.
And he's never going to be a big vocal guy.
He's not going to be. That's just not his nature.
I don't know if I've ever even heard him talk. I know you went to practice.
I literally heard him say like 5 words.
Yeah. What were they, you think?
I don't know.
Doomajig? Is that one?
No, that wasn't one of them.
Doomajig
Hey,
was
coach. That's probably honestly, hey, coach, probably 3 times, so 6 words.
Okay, there you go. And then he just goes and works. You absolutely love that. But he's going to have to play big because he's your great players, your best players play big in big games.
That's facts.
And if you look at this, there's a good chance that he's the best player on the field.
Yep.
And he's going to have to go and play big. And that doesn't dismiss 𝗟𝗓𝗩𝗘 because you're going to need him. I want to see him get involved in the run game too, like they had at Oregon. Utilize him a little bit. And we saw what Carnell Tate could do last game.
Yep.
Like, I'm not saying abandon the run, but if we have to go more 50-50, and the 50% might be a third Trey, a third Q, and a third Will, I'm fine with that too.
And that's the other thing too. Like, what is our jab? What's our jab in the running game? That jab in the running game might look completely different from this week to what it was in the year. And then those reverses, those other things in the run game were your counters. Well, those might be your jabs. And then now that opens up the inside run game, or maybe the quarterback run game in there opens up these things. That becomes your jab. Those are the things that you're thinking about when you go into a week like that.
Absolutely. Make it look the same and keep it a little bit. And then you got to look at the same and then throw different stuff. And lastly, we'll get to this. And this probably shouldn't be a surprise.
Nope.
Caleb Downs, Thorpe Award finalists, semifinalists here. I think they're semifinal breaking it down. Like, he is really good.
As advertised.
He's as advertised. He's great on the field, great tackler, great in coverage, great dude, super leader.
Yeah.
And it's time now. Like, I know him and Will and Seth, some of the guys that transferred in, you want to kind of tread lightly because it's not your team. You need to respect is always earned. But now it's break glass time. Like, when you see something, you say something. Be the dudes you need to be. Be the man you were born to be, Schlegs.
And I think the beautiful thing right now at Ohio State is, like, they've already been indoctrinated. They're Buckeyes. That's why it's so imperative that you come in. They drank the Buckeye Kool-Aid. People forget that I was a transfer.
Yeah.
Right? We were talking about on Tress's podcast. Like, I transferred in.
Beat you into it like a gang.
So, hey, listen, this guy's doing a great job. Excited for him to have this. He plays downhill. He plays like his hair is on fire. It's exactly what you want to see from a safety. It'll also be great to have Lathan back there because those 2 guys back there are very special to having 2 safeties like that.
Oh, if they get Lathan back, that'll be tremendous. They'll still probably roll and rotate some, but Lathan Ransom, if he could play, leadership would be phenomenal. All right, we got tailgate talk coming up next. Our 3 keys to the victory. We'll break it out for you here coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and now we've got our tailgate talk brought to you by our friends at Real Truck. What is Real Truck? Well, Real Truck will outfit your car, truck, Jeep, Bronco. They're going to soup it up beyond belief. Bring it alive because it's fantastic. Schlegs and I have done it both. I do it with my Jeep and my truck. So how about that? And here's the good news for you. They love you so much. You spend $100 at realtruck.com on anything, interior, exterior, whatever it is, you get a free hat. Maybe you keep the hat, maybe you give it to a friend. Who knows? It's all in play. Use promo code Bobby at the end when you check out. That is realtruck.com, promo code Bobby. Spend $100, get the free hat. All right, Schlegs. Age before beauty. I want you to give me your 3 keys. And it can't just be mistake-free, opportunistic offense, relentless defense, and superior special units. Those are the generic ones from Coach Tress.
Play without fear and have fun. Right, play without fear and have fun. That's together.
Is that one?
Well, that's one.
Okay.
And I say that because nobody's going to play. We've been talking about this like nonstop for 4 days. This being the 5th day. Play without fear. You're never going to play a perfect game. Go have fun. We want to see fast, hard, and violent on both sides of the ball and in the kicking game. Okay. Number 2, establish your plan.
Oh.
You mentioned it with Ari. What does that look like? I don't know. But establish it within the first 2 series. That's what I want to see. What does that plan look like?
Yep.
Okay. Because now you're going to make them adjust because they think they know what you're going to do until they see what you're going to do. But establish that early. Okay. And number 3, the turnover battle. In these type of games, turnovers to me automatically go into field position. I can say field position, but in a game like this, turnovers matter because it impacts field position. So make sure that we win that turnover battle. And defensively, like you and I are, that's our opportunity to help our offense. Whether it's not we go 3 and out and they're held back and they have to punt, we flip the field, or we get a turnover, sudden change, our offense goes down there and score. That's our job. Let's win that battle. All right, your 3 keys.
I'm going to start out. Got to be good up front. And that's going to go for both sides of the ball. This Penn State team, this is a classic Penn State team. They don't have John Dotson on the outside. They don't have any burners. What they're going to do is they're going to get after you. They got Ty Warren. They'll use some of the passing game, but they really want to run it with Allen and Singleton.
Yep. Facts.
All right. So stuff the run, and that's going to come down to the box guys up there on defense. Offensively, whoever's playing whether it's Donovan Jackson at tackle, whether you have 𝗟𝗓𝗪, Hinsman, whoever's at guard, however they figure that thing out, Montgomery, whatever they do, you've got to make certain that you can handle the line of scrimmage. If you win the line of scrimmage, and whatever that looks like, I don't think you need to go out there and run for 150 yards. I think if you can run for 90 and still win this thing, but you need to be efficient with how you run the football.
Yep.
And if they're stopping it up and their weakness is their secondary, don't beat your head into the wall. This goes to my second one. You got to be aggressive.
Yep.
You got to be calculated. Like you said, develop the plan, play action, whatever it is. And whether that's some big hitters, and you saw Ryan do that against Georgia in the Peach Bowl, and we were talking with Ari, you get a little conservative sometimes, let it all hang out, man. You got nothing to lose.
Let it rip, baby. Let it rip.
You got to let it rip. Will wants to do it. Will be ready to go. He talked about this being the big moment. He is a 4.84 guy. He grew up in Pennsylvania. They didn't recruit him. It's personal to him.
For sure.
I promise you it's personal. It's personal to Drew Aller, too, who went there. So let Will go make some plays.
Yeah.
Let JJ make some plays. Let Emeka make some plays. Carnell Tate, all those guys. Take some shots. Put their you know how paranoid you are as a safety in a corner when you got dudes hitting drive-bys on you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that'll back it off. That will open it up. And lastly, like you said, Schlegs, I'm going to go with this. It's the most important. I always like to save the best for last. You said have fun, play with your hair on fire. Like, leaders got to lead.
Yep.
And we sat on this couch. We talked to Coach Tress about this. Like, what did you learn from each and every year? I said my senior year, 2005, and you learn how to lead.
Yep.
And you only learn how to lead after following for a long time. To be a leader, you have got to be a great follower at some point because you learn what you need to do to make sure everybody feels good. What did you need as a follower? What did this guy need? And so whether that's Jack Sawyer, whether that's J.J. Smith, the seniors, it's easier. JT Tuimoloau, Cody Simon, Lathan Ransom, dudes that have been here for Denzel Burke. You look at the offensive side. Seth McLaughlin's only been here a half a year.
Months.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
He's played a lot of football. Whether it's Will Howard, Emeka Egbuka, whoever it might be, you've got to lead.
Yep.
And you've got to bring juice to these guys because you're on the road. Everybody's going to be leaning in on you. And it can either cannibalize each other or, man, it's like balling up 5 fingers, turn them into a fist.
Yep.
You get the power right there from the power of the group, the power of the unit, leaning in on each other. And that's what I think it is. And you're going to need to see that. And you're going to need to see it in a big way come Saturday. So I'm excited for these guys. I'm excited for it to be on the road. I think that helps.
I do too.
All of these things, Schlegs. All right. Come up lastly. It's our favorite segment each and every week. Our dude of the week. Remember, it can be anyone because a dude's not a gender. A dude's a lifestyle. Favorite segment here, Schlegs. Dude of the week. Who we got?
Boom, easy. Dodgers, Freddie Freeman, World Series, 4 home runs, 12 RBIs. That's crazy talk.
I don't know how many runs the Dodgers scored, but I think he accounted for half of them.
I
mean, you have 12 RBIs.
in that game last night, like they were up 5. I think it was like 5-1, And then
The Yankees forgot to play defense.
they forgot to play it. No, it was
Communication.
5-0. It was 5-0. And it was like there was the dribbler. Cole didn't cover the bag.
Yeah.
Like, help yourself. Like, just go. He's
Absolutely.
not getting there, man. The guy has broken fingers. You got to finish the play. And then it just opened up.
Absolutely.
Now it's 5-5. But hey, you know what, though? Freddie Freeman in all the games, dude, guy just stepped up and hit home runs, drove in RBIs, did what he had to do.
Dude of the week. Great job Wednesday night. Dodgers winning World Series title. One winning COVID, but that doesn't really count. First major one since '88. And then for me, we're going up to the lake. The dude Schlegs who loves to just munch on those dubs. He got his chance to start. Jameis Winston led the Browns to a victory. Huge emotional moment for them, getting the victory on the lake over the Ravens. That's why you love the NFL.
Oh,
We're talking about unpredictable. No one was calling that. He tried to throw the ball to him 3 times. They declined all of his charitable donations, and you know what? They got the job done. Congratulations, Jameis Winston, dude of the week. Been throwing this around all week. Wasn't sure where to go with it. I'm going to say Ohio State 27, Penn State 17.
I was thinking 24-17, Ohio State.
Buckeyes.
Buckeyes.
Tune in on Monday, 12:30.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully celebrating the Ohio State victory over Penn State, a Penn State defeat, if you will. But it's going to be big. Stay locked in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show.